Everybody, and welcome to Decluttr Me, a podcast about organizing and decluttering your life. And hello, Shelina.
Hi, Chirac. How are you?
I'm good. So we're kind of following on from our episode last week with a special guest, Kate Colbury,
Mm.
from the UK. So I think let me start out by kind of touching base with you on how, what was your takeaway from the episode?
Oh, it was really interesting to see how other people organize their life and their time management. I use calendar and a to-do list, but she was like, "Well, you could do everything on the to-do list." Sorry, not on the calendar. So, and there was a good point in that. There is certain things that I do on the to-do list that I prefer because I can do lists and stuff, which you can't do as easily in the calendar. So there's little bits and pieces. It's just the way people work, and we're going to talk about that today. But it's, you know, you have to find the best way to help you be more productive. But it was interesting to see, there were a lot of things that I put on the to-do list, which I could just put onto a calendar entry. So yeah, that was fascinating. It was
Yeah,
just good to hear.
no, I think it's interesting as well. Like we've come across or we've talked about time management on the show in the past, right? We've talked about the GTD method. We've talked about other just getting through with to dos, and we've done I think an episode entirely on managing your to do list. We've done one on things like Evernote and note taking and kind of coordinating and syncing and making all of that work. So we've kind of covered these topics on different levels. So
Yeah,
it's always
yeah.
interesting to have an additional perspective on it. You mentioned you're using certain things there are certain things in your to-do list that you could have easily put on the calendar, which I think is actually part of the GTD approach as well, right? So
Mm.
when it comes to certain things that have a defined time, you should be seeing it on the calendar so that you know that that's something that's due at a
Yes.
certain point in time or something that you have to act on at a certain point in time.
Yep. Yeah.
So how do you manage your to-dos versus do you do them in different apps? Do you use one app for both? Like, how does that work for you?
I use two apps, but actually, so I used TickTick, which then actually syncs to the calendar. So if you do put a time and a date on an entry in TickTick, it will go into the calendar. So actually, it's a good. It's you can use it in the same way, and everything eventually goes into the calendar. It's just that I can make projects, which is a GTD thing, and you can have the main bit, and then you can have subcategories and subcategories. One thing is like my shopping list, which I just change a date whenever I'm going out somewhere, so I put that into that goes into the calendar. But on TickTick, it has each and every item that I'm going to buy, and then I can tick it off as I buy it while I'm in the mall, in the supermarket. So it's things like that. And when I'm doing big projects, um, you know, and trying to fit everything in, it just works better in that way. But actually, you could do it on GTD, but you just have to put each and every entry of that subcategory into the calendar,
Right.
um, which is extra work sometimes.
Yeah, so
So
I've had like very bizarre, well not bizarre, but like very different kind of luck with trying different apps, and I've been trying a lot of them over the years.
mm,
And I think one of the problems was just this thing, right? Like where I have looked into and tried to adopt the GTD philosophy back in the day, and so the idea of being like you should write everything out into a list or a
yep,
master list, so to speak. And then kind of diversify and decide, okay, something you need to take care of right now versus later, and so on, and kind of work through that process.
yep,
And there are a lot of to-do apps, by the way, that do claim, whether rightfully so or otherwise, that they follow the GTD philosophy, so you can kind of use them to follow it. But I think my problem has always been sort of sticking with the app for long enough, right? So
yeah,
what invariably starts happening is, I tend to still be a little bit of a right person, like literally write on a piece of paper.
right,
And sometimes when I'm going through like a lot of things that I need to do, I'll invariably open up a piece of paper, put all the things down, kind of organize them just visually with a pen, mark things off, and then start following that. And then suddenly my to-do app has been left behind for like a
mm,
week or 2 weeks. Suddenly it's so outdated now, it's extra work to get it up to sync, and then I just kind of
yep,
let it aside. I've even paid for certain apps. So there was an app called Good Task, which is actually really nice. I mean, if you're on the iPhone,
yep,
so it completely syncs with your reminders and your calendar. So it stays native to the phone, right? So in case you accidentally open up reminders, for example, you can still see everything, and so everything's all synced. And the subscription wasn't super expensive as well, and that's something I was kind of looking into to say maybe I should pay for and actually look at a service that maybe charges me for it, but at least gives me the kind of level of service or the willingness to want to go back. I've currently now kind of combined my usage into one app. So I use something called Fantastical, which is a calendar and a to-do list put together.
Right.
So
Okay.
they were primarily a new age calendar app that launched for the iPhone, as an alternative to the native calendar app. And since then, I've been working very hard and like constantly releasing updates. Sometimes, they had like natural language typing much earlier and things like that. So you can type things like, I want to do this at this time, and it kind of makes all the calendar entry for you and that kind of thing.
Oh, that's clever. But do you have
Yeah.
to pay for that one? How much?
Yeah, so they have a free service, of course, so you can actually use the service for free. But to do some of the things that I want to do, which is manage the task list and other features around the calendar, they've moved to a subscription model now as a way of paying back the developers, and I've kind of looked at it as a way to say, these guys are doing really good work. I would love to support an independent app company that's doing something nice, and I'm enjoying the app. I'm actually genuinely using the app as well. So I have been paying them now since they moved to their subscription model. Previously, it used to be you had to pay for the app itself a high rate and then kind of use it. But then it was kind of limiting their features and things like that, and you had to keep paying every year. So I've been using that now as my kind of go-to for everything. And it kind of, like I said, it syncs back with everything, which I really like. But it does a lot of things that I think, so in terms of using, for example, the to-do with the calendar at the same time, so I can mark something as a task, but it still puts it on the calendar for me.
Right. Yeah.
And then when I'm looking at my calendar, I see everything in one place. So if I have a bunch of to-dos that are not assigned a date, it just keeps moving it day by day until I check it off.
Yeah, and I think a lot of them do that. A lot of the apps do that. I think TickTick does that in a way. Todoist, Wunderlist, all of them do that now. It's just finding one that you're comfortable with using. But as you said, you use the paper as well. So some people are more comfortable with using paper to do the to-do list. And actually, funnily enough, I have a planner under here, like here underneath me on my desk. I bought by accident, I bought a giant planner, which I thought I was getting a smaller one. Yeah. And
that's how, by the way, that's how we used to plan things, right? Back in the day, like at least like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, before the iPhones and all that. Like that's what you had. You had big calendars on your desk all the time. I mean, gifting a calendar at the start of the year was like a corporate thing to do, right? Like you gifted calendars to people because everybody needed a planner or a calendar or a diary or whatever.
Yeah. So with me, I mean, for when I'm at my desk and I'm doing work and there's like various things I have to do, say in the morning, I write them down on this planner. So I have it here and I've got my pen and I just start writing things down and then I just tick them off. And it has got tick boxes in it. I've just seen so I can tick it off as well. So it's, yes, I have TickTick and I could go onto my, computer and open up TickTick, put everything in, but it's just easier to quickly write it and tick it off or, cross it off, exactly. Just for those little chores. It's not the big things that I'm doing on that have to be put into the calendar or have to be there because I'm going to be traveling around or, going out and doing something. But some people
which is a problem, I think. So the reason why I cannot just stick and do a paper thing anymore is that same reason, right? Like I want it to be accessible from everywhere. I mean, I don't always take everything with me all the time, and I'm, barring the last few months, I'm fairly mobile. So, there are many times it has happened where I've left either I've left the diary behind or I left the paper on which I was making that particular project's work behind, and then I'm kind of a little bit lost. So it's kind of handy to have it in front of you at all times. And then of course, you can't search, you can't copy and paste and things like that with paper, of course, right? So there's always that downside. And so it's always useful to have tech to kind of help boost you along the way. Yeah.
And some people prefer, I mean, I have a good friend and I helped her to get organized with her time management. She uses Filofax and I showed her what to do with digital and how much easier it would be for her life, especially for the way she does things, and she does use a digital calendar, but she still wanted to put everything into a file of facts, and she felt better about it, about writing it down, and she could remember things from looking at it by writing, which is what Kate talked about as well, that some people prefer it because of the visual view of it. And I'm the same, actually. I have a photographic memory. So I can weirdly remember things, like when I go to clients' houses, I can remember where I put everything. So if I get a message from them going, do you remember where this went? And I'll go, yes, it was in this corner, blah, blah, blah. And it's the same with paper. So if I've written something down, I will remember it. I will remember that piece of paper for years. But if it's digital, I somehow can't. So
no, it's not the same. It's definitely not the same feeling. The
yeah.
retention is definitely different. I mean, I see that myself as well. So when I write something down, I tend to retain it way better. It's just we don't write things down as much anymore, unfortunately. So that's one of those things. Yeah.
So it was good to know, to do that. And I mean, for me, I am, I use the calendar app, the one for Apple, to work on, and people have different calendar apps, but I weirdly use the Google Calendar on my phone, just because it it's a silly reason. It syncs with my Apple Calendar, but if you put in, like, say, the name of the restaurant or a place that you're going to, it'll come up.
Oh, so it's like the Maps integration, basically, that you were going for. Yeah. Okay.
So it goes with the Google Map, and it has a little picture of the restaurant, so you can look at the restaurant and go, yeah, I'm going to go to that restaurant tonight. So it's a little thing. It's silly, but it makes me happy. And at the end of the day, you want to do things that make you happy and make you then, remain organized.
Sounds like someone we refer to sometimes on the show, and that philosophy suddenly. Because happiness is very close to joy, you know that, right?
Let's not talk about joy. It makes me happy.
Yeah. No. So by the way, on the Apple Calendar as well, you do have the option for one thing that I really do like, which is travel time, and Fantastical has this integration as well, so you can kind of preemptively put in to say it's gonna, I want to allow for half an hour, 1 hour of time before the meeting, and kind of blocks it out on the calendar for you, so you kind of know when to leave. I know in the case of Google and Google Maps, like, it kind of, you have that feature, I think, in some countries where you can, it'll estimate for you when, and mark it on your calendar, say, hey, or send you a reminder to say, hey, you need to leave now if you want to make your destination on time.
Yeah, it doesn't here. It's unfortunate. It might do it in Europe and America, but it doesn't here. Right. It just about tells us which restaurant we're going to and how pretty it looks.
By the, I mean, Apple, and that's the same, I think, issue with the Apple Maps thing as well, right? So Apple Maps isn't prevalent here yet.
No.
So a lot of times I notice when I'm trying to put in a destination, like, sometimes it finds it, sometimes it doesn't. So it does do the picture, but it's provided it finds the location. So that's
here.
There,
here I still use Google Maps. I won't use Apple Maps because I've had so many issues with it in the past.
No, we don't. But it's not open here, right? So they don't have directions here and those things here yet. So
that's
why you have to use Google Maps. Yeah, you have to.
So, but there's different calendars. I mean, if you're a Microsoft user, if you're a PC user, then there's the Microsoft calendar as well. And I think they all now have similar features. So it's whichever one you're comfortable with. And it make it easy for yourself. So I color code all the entries. So I have, for anything for home is purple, for anything for work is green, anything else, like I think TickTick is blue, so I'm practically the color of this top right now. So there's, if you do a different color, it just helps, because visually, as soon as you switch on your calendar and you look at today's entry, you can see how many things are purple, how many things are green, how many things are
what's
blue.
Work versus what's like personal time or whatever else. That makes sense.
And it's nice to see, especially in the evening when it's purple and I'm like, oh, I'm going out, so there's those kind of things, once again, it makes you happy, brings me joy. So there's things to do, and for people, talking to, we've talked to Sarah, we've talked to Leslie before about ADHD. They also prefer color because that's what visually comes up for their clients, and it works for anybody. It just makes it, less monotonous to look at when you look at your calendar if you have it in different colors. So that's a good trick to do for everyone.
From a productivity point of view, what I do like also is like with the Apple, at least on the Apple calendar side, I haven't used Google Calendar now in many years. Is actually like there are a lot of times where it'll prompt me to be like, hey, should I activate Do Not Disturb until your meeting's over, kind of thing, which is really handy sometimes, right? So you'll forget to do that, and then obviously get distracted by the phone, and especially with what I do, which is a lot of recording.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice that it'll kind of prompt me during the day as I'm entering things or as I'm walking into meetings, like just 5 minutes beforehand to be like, all right, well, if you're ready for me, I can activate Do Not Disturb, which is nice.
Oh, how do you do that? I don't have that. I
Yeah,
didn't
so
even know that existed.
yeah, we'll talk about that offline separately with instructions, but yeah, you can do that. So it's a way of just it's essentially it's a Siri feature, but you just have to tell Siri to be like, yeah, I want your suggestions. And then when it does,
Oh,
it kind of just gives you a thing. So it's like a one tap from your lock screen, and it just activates Do Not Disturb until the meeting's over, and then automatically switches it off, which is quite handy.
learn something new every day.
We do indeed. That's what the
And
show's
this
all
is why
about.
you're the digital expert.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So yeah, and just on a side note, like one of the reasons why I still have to use this feature fully, but one of the reasons why I looked at Fantastical is because it allows a level of automation for scheduling. So if I'm trying to schedule something with like 4 different people, and I don't want to be like doing this back and forth, I can actually put in, my available slots and send it out, and then the people who are doing it can kind of negotiate like off of a web page and figure out like where the availability is and kind of book
Oh,
the meeting
that's
and
good.
stuff, which is
Yeah.
which is kind of where I looked at doing some of that. So that was kind of another reason why I said, okay, I'm going to kind of invest in this and see if doing it and looking for like a heavily featured one kind of makes my life a little bit better. So far I've been like I said, I've been very happy with it, and I haven't lost any of my native integrations of just using the Apple Calendar, which was the point of it.
Mm.
But yeah, but there are definitely a couple of features that I still need to explore.
So that's good because there is getting to that point in our businesses where we have to start thinking about whether we're going to get a PA, a virtual PA, or and if there is a way, especially now in this economic climate, to save money and to save employing people or what's the word, engaging people to work with us, that's a good thing. So if you've got that, then you don't need a virtual PA to try and organize a calendar, um, you know, like your calendar for you, because you can do it with Fantastico, right?
Correct. So with there's another app which is very popular, by the way. It's called Calendly, right? Most people use that
Yes.
to
Mm.
schedule things. But and I did, by the way, for a while. That's what I was doing. So I had my calendar separate, and then I had this separate, and then everything was syncing kind of in the background. It's just one more thing to manage, which was a bit of a pain. It's another subscription as well, by the way. So I was paying them.
Yeah.
I mean, if I wanted to use them properly, I have to pay them because one of the things is like you have to be able. I want to sync my personal and my professional calendars to know when
Mm.
So there are times when during the day I'm attending to something that's personal, and I want that block to exist on the calendar. And so Calendar only allows you to sync to one calendar
Yeah.
if you're using the
And
free service, that kind of thing. So there's only one kind of meeting you can do. So there are some
yeah.
limitations. So initially, that's what I was using to have people schedule with me. But then, as time passed, like I said, I was like, if I have to upgrade the service, I might as well look at something that maybe works a little bit better for me in terms of integrating everything together. So this is perhaps not as fully featured as Calendly, but then it does a lot of other things for me, and then also gives me an option to say I can automate at least a part of that process, which makes my life easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I use Calendly, and I paid for the subscription for 1 year, and it just hasn't worked as well as I would like it to work for my business. But other people have found it a great way to organize their business, especially SMEs.
Yeah, I think it's perfect for if you're someone that needs to sit in front of people and get to talk to them and do a lot of meetings. It's a great way of kind of just managing your calendar and kind of offloading that job. So I think it's absolutely great.
Yeah,
I think it's the case is different when, like, so for example, for me is I'm trying to book recordings through it and meetings, or in your
yeah,
case it's the same, right? You're doing meetings as well as you're trying to book sessions with clients, right? Like
yeah,
when you need to go to
exactly.
them and stuff. So I think when it's slightly more complicated, then without a subscription, it's very difficult to make Calendly work for you that way. But then also it's not the easiest thing to use.
No, it's not. And even if you did pay a subscription and it had all the features, it was still quite cumbersome to use for for
Yeah,
me, because
it's for that style of
yeah,
requirements.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's only good for meetings. So, and it also, once again, it comes back to what works for you. So, a good thing to do is, if you do want to use these time management apps, use simple things like the calendars or to-do lists. Calendar is a good way to start and to get used to using the calendar on a day-to-day basis. But then if you want to use other apps, see the reviews, see what people have said who have got similar, in the same industry or similar industry to you, so you can see if it works for you, or talk to people in the same industry as you and see what they use and see what their recommendations are. So if you belong to an association, they can advise what they use with regards to apps. And that's for anything, like whether it's an accounting app, it's a, calendar app, anything that you use for your business or your day-to-day life, you can find out from other people in similar situations what they use. So even in mums groups, if you're a mum and you're trying to balance your life, work-life balance, or just just trying to sort your life out, you could go to mom groups and say, what do you guys use to make sure that you're organized and can manage your time and do everything in a day, to make the most of the resources out there and the people and groups out there that are in same situations as you, to help you to get the right app and to get the right system in place for yourself.
Yeah, so good. That sounds good. So I think that's all we have for you this week. We kind of wanted to talk a little bit about sort of our reflections of the episode from last week, and also kind of what we're using and how we're kind of organizing our lives. So yeah, if you want to talk to Shelina a bit more about time management, if you want to have a chat with her about kind of how you can manage not just your time but also, of course, your clutter better,
Mm-hmm.
you can do that by reaching out to her at Decluttr Me. So that's DECLUTTRME, on all of social media, and declutterme.com as well.
All right.
Yeah, and
Bye.
that's it for us. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.